All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well today. This is the NBA Tournament Strategy Show, where on this show we do a quick look back at yesterday, see what went well, see what did not go as well, and then we look at today's slate, kind of walk through, go game by game, talk through who we like, who we might not like as much, and go from there. And then on the pre-lock show, we talk through the implementation of what we're doing, talk through leverage plays, core plays, guys we're going low on, etc. Let's look at yesterday. This was the $100,000 winning lineup. Honestly, I went back and forth on this. I considered just burning the tape and not even looking back at yesterday and just being like, screw it, who cares? Yesterday was a day that I did not do very well. Core plays were trash. Um, Leverage plays didn't work out. But honestly, that was the fate for most people. A lot of people struggled yesterday. There were a lot of random injuries that were just kind of scattered across the board that hurt me and a lot of other people too. But there were still some things that we can take away from yesterday, kind of minus the injuries. De'Aaron Fox was fantastic yesterday. We were right about that one. That wasn't a shock, but definitely wish I had more exposure to him. Richardson was a little bit of a surprise. He was probably the super low owned play that you needed to hit the 100K. Keldon Johnson, we did force exposure to, so that went well. Naz Reid was a lock for me once Gobert was out, and that wasn't a super sneaky play, but made a ton of sense that he made it here. Tillman made a lot of sense once we found out that he was going to be starting over Clark. I increased exposure to Tillman, but I didn't have a lot. I was around field weight exposure, so still nothing too bad here. Fred VanVleet, we had a min on, I believe. So that was fine. Lauri Markkanen, again, we were close to slightly over the field on him. Wasn't forced. The domination station liked him a good bit, so that was nice. And then Jakob Poeltl, we were over the field on as well. Another one that wasn't forced, but the domination station liked him a lot. For me, it was weird. My core changed like 10 times over like the last 30 minutes of slate. Just because every time I ran the DS, I was getting a different combination. I wish I would have stuck with my gut and faded Shungen, but didn't pan out. That happens sometimes in DFS. For me, just got to keep on trucking along, moving along. We were close on some of the right pieces, just need to narrow down the field a little bit more. But honestly, I probably wouldn't have done anything different. So just the way it is. Dave, good to see you, man. Appreciate it. Definitely do appreciate the like. So if y'all could do that, that would be awesome. Also, subscribing is helpful too if you're not already. Appreciate you, Dave. Thomas Dye, good to see you as well. Surviving yesterday wasn't a great day, but I'm really, I don't like to, I'm really big on just keep moving on. Like, that's what's kept me going in DFS. Because if I get down too much, then I'll just stay down. But if I'm just like, hey, on to the next one, you just is what it is. Kaboom said, Wagwan. Gal, today is a new day. Hopefully not so much news. Agreed. I don't know about that news piece, but definitely going to be interesting. I also wish we had more news yesterday, too. I think the lack of news was not great. I do think if we had the Gobert news earlier, we could have done a lot more with that and had some nicer lines instead of playing some of the crappy guys early. But, it doesn't always work out that way. Cody said, I used the pivot tool the Army provides and it got me onto Suggs and off of Noel. Paid off for me. They're awesome, man. That is really, really, really nice. It's funny. Also, I had another friend, E-Money. He had a really nice takedown in a showdown yesterday. So I don't know. I didn't ask him if he's okay with me sharing how much he won, but he had a really nice win yesterday. So congrats to him. And Cody, sounds like you had a pretty good day as well. And that's one thing I'm a really big proponent of. When I was a member, I listened to a lot of information from a lot of different coaches and things of that sort. I still made my own choices and made my own pivots to try to get different. So I always recommend taking some of those risks like you did, man. And I'm glad it paid off. All right, let's get and move into today's slate. It's an interesting one. Probably the biggest question mark will be with the Warriors. There's some talk of quite a few of their starters missing this game, and so that will dramatically impact this slate. Also, this Pelicans Mavericks game, I've heard people talking about they were concerned that the Pelicans might not be able to make it to Dallas because of the ice storm. I haven't really heard much about that. It seems like that might not be an issue, so I'm going to treat this slate as if that game is happening until I'm told otherwise. So Starting off, we have the Lakers against the Indiana Pacers. For the Lakers, we have some things that might be interesting. LeBron James is questionable, still with that ankle injury. Anthony Davis is probable. Pat Bev is probable. Austin Reeves is out. Sometimes we'll go ahead and talk about the Pacers news too. Tyrese Halliburton is expected to return. He's missed a few games here, so would assume he's going to be on a minutes limit, but it's not always guaranteed. We've seen guys come back from being out for a little bit and still see like 25 to 30 plus minutes. So something to keep an eye out for. I doubt I'll have a ton of exposure, but I do understand the low ownership potential upside play there, but there's some risk involved. Daniel Tease is questionable. So for me, with Halliburton more than likely returning, that makes guys like McConnell and Nimbard less interesting. The other guys like Heald, Mathurin, and Crew and Nesmith are still more like GPP flyer plays. Like I still think they're viable on a slate like this against a really bad Lakers team, just not as exciting as they were back when Halliburton was out. For the Lakers, we've seen some weird crap. This week, Rory was super chalk. And when LeBron James and Anthony Davis were out, and he was absolute trash. And then LeBron and Anthony Davis returned, and then Rory was better and performed well from a DFS standpoint. I just see him as like a GPP flyer play. If the domination station gives me some exposure, I'm okay with it. But he's not a guy I'm planning on trying to force exposure to on this slate. Thomas Bryant is a lot less interesting when Anthony Davis plays, so not my favorite spot for him. Alternatively, I do like Miles Turner. I'm a Miles Turner fan, boy, or whatever you want to call it. I've liked him a lot this season. It's worked out a lot. The matchup against the Lakers is a nice one, even with Anthony Davis playing. So if the ownership's right, even if this is what it's going to be close to around lock, I want to make sure I'm at least around field weight, considering making him a leverage play, but I'm not sold on it yet. Anthony Davis at 5% ownership. If that stays, I'm going to be over the field on him. I like the spot. Matchup against the Pacers isn't super scary for me, so more than happy to attack with AD here. LeBron James being questionable is still viable on a slate like this. The 10,700 price tag is still a lot for me to swallow, even though LeBron's been fantastic the last few games. It's just price tag mixed with ownership, if that sticks, is a little bit much for me. Not going to try to fade him. Like, if the domination station gives me exposure, I'm not going to exit out or anything like that, but not my favorite spot on the slate, personally. So, Miles Turner, AD, really the pieces I'm the most excited about here. Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Grizzlies currently have Concher listed as TBD and Steven Adams on the injury report. So it looks like Desmond Bane was a surprise play yesterday a little bit. He was questionable, and it looks like he's going to play again tonight. So that makes a lot of these guys less interesting for me from the Grizzlies perspective. The Cavaliers, only Windler is out, so nothing too crazy from that standpoint. Give me 1 second. John Morant and Damian Lillard were awesome last night. Somehow they didn't make the 100K winning line, but they were still really good. Those are plays that wish we could have went a little bit higher on. We were close to double the field on Joss, so that's not crazy, but Lillard was definitely one that would have been nice to have a little bit more of. John Morant has been fantastic this season. The matchup isn't my favorite. He's low owned, though, or he should be lower owned because of that. So, again, not my favorite spot, but the low ownership, I am more than likely willing to take a shot on him. We'll see how the slate plays out by the pre-lock show, but he's on my radar for that reason alone, just being low owned, and he has a ton of upside. Donovan Mitchell is going to be pretty popular today. He's too cheap for the upside he brings in the minutes that he's now playing again. He was out for a little bit. We needed to make sure his minutes were there, but now that we know he can play 30-plus minutes, they're not trying to hold him back any. At 8,100, plug-and-play kind of guy for me. So we'll at least be around field weight. Totally fine being above the field of him. Being above the field on him here. Outside of that, not super excited about these other pieces. Like Bane, never really a fan of playing him. Similar story with Brooks when Bane is playing. Jaren Jackson Jr. is usually fine in a nutshell, but against the Cleveland Cavaliers, a really solid defense, not my favorite spot. I am more interested in guys like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen than I typically am. So I plan on having exposure to them, but I haven't, I'm not sure how much yet, but they will be on my radar for sure. Tillman, if he starts here, slightly more is viable, but I don't love the matchup, so I'm not really trying to force it. Similar story with Clark if he ends up starting or whatever happens there. Just not my favorite spot against a really good Cleveland Cavs team. Moving on. We have the Miami Heat against the Knicks. These two teams are solid defensive teams. They play at very slow paces, and that's why the game total is much lower than the other games. For me, what that means, it doesn't mean I'm trying to full fade this game or I'm not going to play anyone from this game, but it does mean I'm not planning on having lines with like 2, 3, 4 guys from this game. It's typically more of like a one-off situation for me. That's not really a rule I have to make. The domination station is usually smart enough to do that naturally, but if for some reason a lot of these guys start popping, that's a rule I am okay with implementing if I feel like I need to. The Miami Heat have a nice long injury list per usual. We have Victor Oladipo listed as doubtful. Gabe Vincent is healthy. Looks like he's going to play. Jamal Cain out. Orlando Robinson's out still. Duncan Robinson's out still. Jovic is out still. Yurtsman's out still. None of that really matters outside of Oladipo being doubtful. That's a slight boost to Vincent and Strus. You can even include Kyle Lowry in that consideration as well, but Kyle Lowry has been so bad recently that no one wants to even think about playing him. For that reason, more than likely, I'll consider it and consider him as a viable option at 4,900. Hopefully, Oladipo being gone will help give him a slight boost, so he's on my radar. Can make a similar case for Tyler Hero, 6,700, not bad. Of course, I tend to play more Hero and Butler's out. But I don't hate the spot for him. The price tag is really what's kind of getting me there. And it looks like ownership is kind of following him and Jimmy here for the reason. Like, I think they just make a lot work. Again, which makes me a little nervous because I talked about it, lowest game total on the slate. Don't want to have too much exposure to this game, but I understand the reasoning behind the ownership. So I'm just going to have to see how it plays out when we start actually making lines. Bam Adebayo, not my favorite spot, not my favorite matchup. Had a really bad game last time out. Brunson and Randall, not super excited about it because of the matchup. Hartenstein had a really nice time out. He didn't start. Sims started, but he can still have a lot of upside when he's efficient. But again, not my favorite matchup. So really just not a spot I'm trying to force exposure to. So for me, I'm really just looking at like the Heat players with Oladipo out. The increasing usage rate is interesting to me. But primarily looking at the guys who are not as popular as Butler and Hero, but still not trying to fade them. All right, this game is one that I'm actually kind of excited about. We have the Hornets against the Bulls. Both of these teams are pretty healthy. Cody Martin's out for the Hornets. Kelly Oubre's out for the Hornets, but that's not new information. Javonte Green's out. Lonzo Ball's out, but again, none of that is new. When it comes to the Bulls, you can pretty much, on any given slate, say Vucevic, DeMar DeRozan, or Zach LaVine. The hard part is picking which one or two you want. Last slate, it was LaVine and Vucevic. The situation's even tougher because they're facing off against the Hornets, who are bad defensively at every single position. But there's one of these three that you guys know I'm going to be over the field on, and who will be a leverage play no matter how popular he is. And that guy's Nikola Vucevic. I am going to, if he's 16% owned, I'll be at 30%. If he was 30, I would be at 60. I don't really have a cap on how much Vucevic I want. I want a lot. LaMelo Ball, I wasn't on the train on Monday, stopped me from having a big win. Honestly, if he's going to be 13% owned, I'm really not trying to chase it. That's just my style, though. Like, he makes a lot of sense. I understand why people are playing him. I don't hate it. It's just not what I'm doing, more than likely, unless the domination station just loves him today. I prefer to go Terry Rozier. I prefer to go with Terry Rozier. The ownership isn't great, but I like his price tag a lot more and his upside. Plumlee had a nice game last time out, especially with Mark Williams being super chalky. But as of right now, I don't have a strong stance on them. If I have some exposure through the domination station, I'm fine with it, but not trying to force it. Similar story of Patrick Williams. He's never really a guy that I try to force exposure to, but he makes a lot work. So if he's there for me. Not a strong take. Alex Caruso has had some big games. They might need him a bit more defensively, potentially. Hornets aren't that scary. But he's viable. He can make it into some of my lineups, and I won't be upset about it. And I think that's it for this game. Really like the Bulls players. Vucevic is number one for me, like one of the top plays for me on this slate. And then I'll have decent exposure to both DeMar and Levine and Terry Rozier. And then however much LaMelo the DS gives me. All right, next up we have the Pelicans against the Mavericks. This is honestly a game that I'm never very excited about anytime they face off. Pelicans are a solid defensive team. The Mavericks play at a super slow pace with Doncic out there. Dyson Daniels is out. Zion Williams is out for the Pelicans. Christian Wood is out. Maxi Kleber is out for the Mavericks. None of that is new information. Of course, Luka Doncic is always in play. Ownership is a little scary, but honestly, it makes a ton of sense. He breaks slates all the time. Probably has the highest ceiling on the slate. No reason to not play him. I'll more than likely at least be around field weight just to have some exposure to him. I doubt he'll be a leverage play. I don't really love the matchup too much, but Luka's a guy that you kind of just need to have exposure to. Don't love the matchup for CJ, but ownership puts him on my radar as a potential leverage play, but he has not been in good form lately. Spencer Dinwiddie, he has games where he can make it into the Nuts lineup, even with Doncic healthy, but that's not something I try to chase very often. Brandon Ingram's minutes are becoming more and more consistent, but again, the slow pace scares me. I'm okay with having some exposure, but I doubt he'll be a leverage play. Joe Val, minutes are everywhere, rarely ever a guy that I try to force exposure to unless I just love the matchup. Tim Hardaway Jr.'s shot has not been falling. His minutes are there, but man, the production has not been. With that being said, because of that, he's low owned, and so I'll more than likely be over the field on him. So definitely on my radar as a leverage play for sure. Herb Jones worked out well last time for us as a core play, but he was really just a lineup filler on a slate with really bad value. So not something that I'm trying to chase. If we get exposure, we get it. Not something I'm trying to force. Similar story of Larry Nance Jr. that worked out for us last time around, but not something I'm trying to force on this slate. Dorian Finney-Smith is another guy who's a streaky shooter. He gets minutes. He needs his shot to fall. He's getting a decent amount of ownership on this slate. I'm not really trying to avoid him for any particular reason, but he's also not a guy that I'm trying to force exposure to. Trey Murphy is always on my radar when Zion's out. 4,600 is price appropriate. We're not getting him at an extreme value or anything like that. Again, the matchup is what's making it hard for me to try and force exposure to him. But if this was any other matchup, I would be at least double the field, so like at least 5 to 10% ownership on him. But as of right now, it's hard for me to find a case. But I am going to look for one as I'm doing research throughout the day. I want to find a reason to play him because I just like his upside and he never has a lot of ownership. And that's pretty much it for me for this game. Not my favorite spot, but viable plays, just given the way the slate's breaking out. Next up, we have the Nuggets against the Warriors. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a crazy situation until we figure out what the heck is actually happening here. Stephen Curry is at risk of being a rest candidate, so he might not play. We don't know yet. Klay Thompson is unlikely to play as of right now. Andrew Wiggins is TBD. We do not know if he's going to play yet. Another rest candidate. Draymond Green, same story. Currently listed as TBD, potential rest candidate. If all 4 of those guys are out, that's a nice, huge increase to Jordan Poole, Kuminga, DiVincenzo, even guys like Ty Jerome, Moses Moody also are on my radar as well. Really, we're gonna if the main core starters are out, we're just going to be playing a lot of this crappy Warriors value, and they're crappy. They're crappy players in consideration to like the normal guys we play, but they're strong value plays for the Warriors on this slate. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'll have a lot of exposure to the Warriors. We'll have a lot of value on this slate if those guys end up being out. More than likely, I'll probably try and find a low-owned Warrior that I can take a shot on. If I had to make a guess of who that will be, Anthony Lamb's definitely on the table as an option. Maybe even Looney, but we'll see. JaMychal Green tends to find his way into breaking slates sometimes in these weird spots too, but it's really going to be Kuminga as super chalk and then the other guys too. So we'll see. Definitely a game that I plan on having a lot of exposure to. For the Nuggets, another team I like a lot today, Aaron Gordon is currently listed as questionable. Honestly, even if Aaron Gordon isn't questionable, like if he ends up playing, I'm still planning on having a lot of exposure to this team. But if Aaron Gordon is out, I am much more excited to play and have exposure to this team. So Jokic, the huge risk here, though, huge risk of a blowout here. The Nuggets are one of the best teams in the West. The Warriors are more than likely not going to have any other starters. So this game could get ugly very fast. But if it doesn't, or if Jokic or one of these guys are just extremely efficient, they can still get there. In particular, probably my favorite play, which is weird to say, at his ownership, it looks like he might not be that popular. Michael Porter Jr. at 5,700. Even if this game does blow out, I feel like he can at least make value. So I like having a little bit of safety there, but also his upside if Aaron Gordon ends up being out is something that I like to target. So I'll be over the field on him. Apparently that won't be that hard, but we'll see if ownership adjusts. Jamal Murray was freaking fantastic in the last game that they played. So his ownership's looking like it's going to be nice at 7,700. Really shouldn't be too hard for him to get there either. But I do have some concerns that are just kind of stopping me from making him a forced leverage play, mostly just the ownership. Similar story of Jokic. I plan on being over the field on both of them. I think the domination station will like them both just naturally, but we'll see on the pre-luck show where we actually land. Outside of like the obvious plays, KCP, Bruce Brown are definitely guys that are going to be on my radar, especially if Aaron Gordon ends up being out. All right, last game on the slate, we have the Clippers against the Bucks. The Clippers, Marcus Morris is currently listed as questionable. John Wall is out. For the Bucks, Giannis is probable. Bouchamp is probable, and then Portis is out still. So no major surprises there. This game is one that I'm not like super excited about, to be honest. Two solid defensive teams. Again, not the first time we've said that on this slate, but probably more viable plays in my mind. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are priced appropriately. Giannis is definitely on my radar. Probably if we had to rank the top 3 most expensive guys on this slate, I probably would say like Doncic, Jokic, and then Giannis, but that's exactly what the ownership is doing as well. So I'm going to need to brainstorm a little bit and see if I want to follow that track or how I want to play that situation out, but something I want to think about more so for sure. Kawhi, Paul George, viable, but again, I'm not a fan of this matchup. They're priced appropriately, so not really something I'm trying to force as of right now. Really, for both of these teams, there aren't really any exciting plays I'm like jumping out of my seat for, just guys that I'm okay having exposure to. So, long story short, for me on this slate, I plan on having a lot of exposure to this Hornets Bulls game. I plan on having a lot of exposure to the Lakers Pacers game, and then the Super Chalk Warriors Nuggets game. And then outside of that, I have more one-off pieces from the remaining 4 defensive games. So that's just how I'm playing this out. That's how I'm thinking about it mentally. I look forward to seeing you all on the pre-lock show later today at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out. Have a good one.